But looking at it now, I think that it's okay to be unique and it's okay to be different. And that's what the U.S. is all about. So one advice that I would give to anybody who might be in my situation is, it's okay to be different. That's fine. It's okay to be the strange kid that, speaks 6 languages and has an accent and grew up somewhere that, there wasn't a lot of food or a lot of pop culture or only one TV channel. That's okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
From Fiore Communications, it's How I Got Here, a show of inspiring stories from Tallahassee area leaders, business owners, and neighbors. All the challenges, opportunities, inspirations, the twists and turns of life that led them to where they are today. Everyone has a story worth telling, and I am really grateful that we get to bring a few of them to you. I truly have been changed by my conversations with these amazing people, and I'm confident you will be too. I'm Dave Fiore, and in this episode, I speak with Anita Bushnyakova, Chief Financial Officer at Kids Incorporated of the Big Bend. Born in Sofia, Bulgaria, Anita experienced very different sets of challenges as a child. First, it was enduring the turbulent years of the Eastern European country's shift from communist rule to fledgling democracy, and then assimilation into American culture as a 13-year-old who didn't speak English at all. Her response was to use education as a path to opportunity, earning a perfect score on the SAT and national scholarships, which she used to attend Florida State and study international affairs. Her broad experiences with an international perspective have shaped her priorities as a professional, community volunteer, advocate, and mom. Anita shares about her plan to join the Peace Corps, her aversion to debt, and her love of Tallahassee. She also talks about the importance of resilience and community support in overcoming adversity, the value of early childhood education, and why we as a community must ensure equal opportunities for all our children. We began our conversation talking about growing up in a slowly changing Bulgaria.
So life in Bulgaria was very different than my life here in the U.S. I grew up in the post-communist years in Bulgaria. There was a really big transition going on since the Berlin Wall fell in 1989. And we were very secluded from the rest of the world. You really couldn't go past East Berlin, to the west, and then past Russia to the east. And growing up there, like I said, it was different. So some things that I would say are notable is, for example, the fact that we couldn't control our heating. It was controlled by the central government. So during the winter, radiators were centrally controlled. And now I control my heating from an app on my phone. So that's different.
So what does that mean? So it a certain temperature or a certain amount of time it would run? Or what does that look like?
Both.
Okay.
It was whatever the central government wanted your temperature to be like. So if it got too hot inside our apartment in the winter, we would have to open windows. We didn't have any control over our heating. And things like really big lines, having to get up at 4 a.m. to get in line and stand in the store to be able to get bread and milk. The country went through a huge deflation period. And so there just wasn't, even if you had money, there was nothing that you could really do with it. So really that feeling of roughness, it was just tough. It was very different. It's different now. Bulgaria is a thriving European capital and a beautiful, advanced place to be. But during those years, it was just difficult childhood. I remember that my mom used to make the soup that she called crumb soup, and we would all get really excited about it. And of course, when you're a child, you don't realize this. But as an adult, now I know that it was literally soup made out of breadcrumbs because that's all she could have if there wasn't enough ration for bread that day. And she didn't make it to the line. So, it was very different from my life here.
So you were there your whole childhood?
I came here when I was 13.
Okay.
Which is a pretty bad age for any major transition.
Right.
But for the most part.
And you'd mentioned that it's it's post-communism, so it's after the breakup of the USSR, right? But that doesn't mean that freedom and opportunity and a dramatically changed lifestyle starts immediately, right? That process takes time.
Yes, absolutely. And that didn't really start until, or things didn't start looking better until 2007 when Bulgaria became part of the European Union and things changed. But the political system was very unstable during those post-communist years. It was very chaotic, and it was very difficult to live there. And as a matter of fact, the population declined because of the uncertainty, and people weren't having a lot of children. So getting into college in Bulgaria during the years when I attended college, even though I was in the U.S., was very easy because there just weren't a lot of people due to that uncertainty.
Right. When you were a kid and you were having crumb soup and things were difficult and you were hot or cold or, things weren't in your control, it seems like when kids are in situations, unless they know about something different, it's just normal to them. You don't really understand how it could be anything else. So did you feel oppressed or deprived, or was it just the way it was?
No, I didn't at all. It was all we knew. It was very normal. Going back and seeing pictures, I understand now. But back then, that was just all we knew, and it was normal life. But I will tell you that even in those difficult times, there is positivity because, for example, if you didn't make it to the line and you weren't able to get bread or milk, there's a real sense of community and people helping each other. And I grew up with that instilled in me because there was your neighbor that would come and help you. They would never say no, or if you had more and they didn't, you would help them. So even though we didn't have much and we didn't know that we didn't have much because we were pretty isolated as far as the media is concerned too. There was only one channel, Channel 1 on
sense.
TV. And it was pretty isolated, but we had a real sense of community, and I think that's always been ingrained in me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Did all your food and everything you need come from the government, or could you shop if you had money, or how did that work?
You can shop if you had money. There was a supermarket called Dallas. You could go in there. There were some stores that had foreign goods, but in order to shop in those stores, you had to have dollars, and then you needed to show where the dollars came from. So if you knew somebody abroad that sent you money, that's fine. You just need to show the source of that.
How do you show the source of where the money came?
A transaction, I suppose.
That seems really weird.
Well, that's the idea. Is it was very limited. It was very limited to those who had, and that was usually the leaders of the Communist Party,
right?
That were able to shop in those kind of stores. Of course, they weren't questioned about whether or not they had.
So even in your time, it was still about control. Your family was controlled. The community was controlled. And I don't want to harp on that too much. I just want to give it. We just get so. And I haven't traveled a lot, so this is the only world I know. Mm-hmm. And so to know about a place where, that you experience that you didn't have those freedoms that we can so easily take for granted, it just helps to have some context about what that was like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you, having that different worldview and perspective has helped me in a lot of ways. I never take anything for granted, having a car or being able to go to the store and the store is filled with all these different foods that you can have. But despite those difficult beginnings, I will tell you that what I've noticed is that the U.S. really defines privilege as someone's socioeconomic status. And I disagree with that highly because despite the fact that we didn't have much or anything, I will tell you that I grew up extremely privileged because I had family and friends that really cared about me and community that looked out for me. And so it just depends on how you define privilege and what you're grateful for and keeping that in perspective.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about your family, your parents. Do you have siblings? What was family life for you?
I do. I have a brother. He chose to go back to Bulgaria and live there, and he's a fantastic person. I have 2 nieces. His daughter's in Bulgaria as well. And, something different that you might also find interesting is despite the difficulties of communism, education was really, really valued. in my family growing up. And so my mom has 2 master's degrees, and she is an accountant. She was the comptroller of the Bulgarian post office back at home. And my dad is an electrical engineer. So even though we didn't have much, we were very educated, which it doesn't always go hand in hand. But my mom and dad are here now, close to me, and brothers back home in Bulgaria. So the family's kind of split half and half.
Okay. All right. So when you think about your childhood, for kind of the happy things, like you said, the community coming together, but what do you remember most, or what do you think about most when you remember growing up in Bulgaria?
Probably the food.
I was going to ask you about the food. What food did you love that you cannot get here, or what was different?
There's just so much. There's certain herbs that don't grow here, and the yogurt. Bulgaria is very popular with its yogurt because there's a particular culture that only grows in Bulgaria. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the ingredients in the yogurt, even a Greek yogurt or plain yogurt in the store, you'll see the culture named Bulgaricus.
Oh, really?
It's really good.
So is that like a farming thing? I mean,
it's the climate.
The climate.
The climate is right for that particular bacteria and culture to grow in Bulgaria, and that's why the yogurt is so popular.
Wow.
Feta cheese is just, it's very good. I love the food there. Mm-hmm.
Is there any dish that you like when you go home or go somewhere else that you really look forward to that you can't get here?
Probably everything on the menu, but if I have to think about a particular one, there's one called moussaka, which is potatoes and meat. It's very good. Bulgarian salad, which is cucumbers and tomatoes with feta cheese. It's just
kind of a Mediterranean kind of diet.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any Bulgarian restaurants anywhere in Florida or near here?
Yeah, there's a big Bulgarian community in St. Pete. There's some in Miami as well, but I'm actually fortunate enough to have a really good Bulgarian community in town as well. And we get together really often, and we cook Bulgarian food. We celebrate Bulgarian holidays. So we kind of, even though a lot of them have assimilated, and I have especially assimilated a lot, we still keep the Bulgarian culture alive.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. All right, so what kind of kid were you? Were you were you a rule follower? Were you kind of try to carve your own path? Were you good in school? How would you describe yourself as a kid?
So I guess it's twofolded depending on the age. So when I was little and I lived in Bulgaria, I was a very, very good kid. When I was 4, my parents, due to the difficult conditions in the capital, they actually sent me to live with my grandparents in the province, in the countryside. And that was mainly because my grandparents were able to grow their own food and had some animals, and it was easier to feed somebody that way. And so I remember when I was 6, I realized, wow, this woman, my grandma, she doesn't have to watch me, so I better be nice to her. So I was always a really good kid back then, and I was involved in piano. I played the piano for 11 years religiously every day and took a lot of extra math lessons. So in Bulgaria, I was a very good kid. Now, when we came to the U.S., there was a lot of rebelling because it was all so new, and I was mad at my parents because they took me away from everything I knew. And
let's talk about that. Let's talk about the transition to America. Mm-hmm. Why did your family come to the U.S.?
They were offered a green card, which is a lottery system in Bulgaria. And people play and play and play. And it's not just in Bulgaria. There are certain countries in the world where this green card lottery system is available. And it works just like that. It's a lottery. You get picked or you don't get picked. I know people that have played 10 times and haven't gotten picked. Well, of course, we got picked from the first time. I think we're always meant to come here. And then we underwent an extensive background checking process, fingerprinting, a lot of thoroughness to make sure that we were clean to come here. And they decided to take the big leap. I think had it been after 2007, after Bulgaria entered the European Union, we wouldn't have been having this conversation today right now.
Okay.
We'd still be there. But it was 2005. And so we decided to make the transition mainly for education and better opportunity, which is what the West and, the world past the Berlin Wall promised everybody.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of the classic, a chance for a better life for our family to go start over in America.
Yes,
right?
Especially because of the education. Like I said, my family values education a lot. And while that's offered in Bulgaria, America's known for its top educational institutions throughout the world.
Yeah. All right. So where did you end up in America when your family came over?
I ended up in Gainesville,
I'm sorry.
Florida. I know. Well, the reason for that is in order to come to the U.S., you have to be sponsored. So somebody has to sign off that they will take you in for the first 6 months and be able to help you kind of get established. And my mom's sister was in Gainesville, who had also played the green card lottery and won after a few years. So that's why we ended up going over there to Gatorville.
Okay. So you're 13 when you come to Gainesville, so now you're integrated into American public schools? Mm-hmm. All right. So what was that like? How well did you speak English? What that must have been, it's difficult for any 13-year-old to enter a new school, even if it's across town, much less across the world. So what was that like for you?
It was horrible. It was really horrible. I didn't speak any English at all.
Really none?
Absolutely none. In Bulgaria, we grew up speaking mainly Bulgarian, but I was also taking Spanish lessons. I can speak Croatian, I can speak Serbian, I can speak Macedonian, Russian. English was not one of those languages. And I was entered into an ESOL program, which is English for speakers of other languages, but there was no other Bulgarians in there because it's such a small country. So it was really tough. I was trying to go back home to Bulgaria in any way I possibly could because I really missed it. But there's no going back for my family. We were staying here and we were going to make it work.
I mean, you were trying to figure out ways that you could somehow get back on your own?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You really miss what you know.
Yeah.
Change is really hard, especially at that age. And for that transition. So in 6th grade, I remember my grades were not very good. They were not a shining example. And I think during those years, I was so angry with my parents that it became, I'm going to show you. I'm going to, get back. But then I started to learn English rather quickly because when nobody speaks your language around you, you kind of don't have a choice.
Right.
And I realized that there's a really fascinating thing about the U.S. is if you're smart and driven, you will be paid to go to school. And that was my chance of getting away from my parents because I was so mad at them. This is the mind of a 13-year-old.
Sure.
So,
I get it.
You have to realize,
sure,
what do I do to get away from these people?
No, your whole world was turned upside down.
Mm-hmm. But then I realized that you can get financial aid and you can get scholarships. And I didn't have any money saved for college because college was free in Bulgaria. So there was no Florida prepaid for me. I wouldn't have had any way of making college obtainable. And so in 8th grade, I just became obsessed with my education. So I got all A's in 8th grade. I got into a magnet program, which is very similar to the IB program called Cambridge. In high school, I enrolled at UF. I studied, took the SAT over and over again until I got a perfect score. Because I guess I was always meant to go into finance.
Wait, you got a perfect score?
Yes.
On the SAT? Mm-hmm. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, it was a process, but that comes with a National Merit Scholarship, which pays for.
So you were just so driven. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, obviously you have to be smart. I could study all day and I don't think I would get, or I could study for years and wouldn't get a perfect score. But that was your ticket out, was to get the highest, achieve the most you could academically to get the scholarship so you could go away and go to school.
Yes, that was my goal, is get my education and then, get out, leave.
You mean leave? At that point, were you thinking leave to go back home or just do something different?
Probably to go back home, yeah. I really missed it. It's interesting how missing something can be such a driving force in your life.
Yeah.
So that really became my main focus in high school. I wanted to be independent, and I really had that drive. So I was able to, once I got to college, I was able to go in as a junior, and I graduated with my bachelor's degree in 2 years. So that was very quick.
Because you were dual enrolled at UF while you were in high school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I also had a lot of advanced credits from the magnet program that I was in. Yeah.
So you have a perfect score in the SAT. You have scholarships. You could have probably gone anywhere you wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. But you chose to go 2.5 hours away in Tallahassee. So how did you end up at Florida State?
Well, so actually my parents don't know this, and it'll be the first time they hear it on your podcast, but I got into Cornell, which was a really big achievement for me.
Ivy League, yeah.
However, National Merit Scholarship pays for the tuition, but room and board was still very expensive and not affordable up in New York. And so I did the math, and I was going to have a lot of debt still. So then I saw that in-state tuition is actually a lot more affordable. And with the National Merit Scholarship, I was also able to get Bright Futures because of my test scores and my grades.
Yeah.
And it just made financial sense to come and to stay here. But I was not going to UF.
Right.
So, I still needed to get away, right? So
and
I
it's
came,
far enough. I mean,
it's far enough. Yeah, it's far enough. And I came, I visited, I really liked FSU. And then at that point, I started to realize that if I do leave, I'm actually going to miss my family.
It's funny how that works, right?
Now as an 18-year-old.
Yeah, you're like, that wasn't all bad.
No, it wasn't. You realize the sacrifices that they made, but it's just hard when you have a young teenage mind.
Yeah.
And so I came to FSU. I still had part-time jobs after college because I think with my mom's finance mind, and also there's a thing in Eastern Europe where you hear about American debt. And we were really well aware of the politics, of the news, of the economy, not just in Europe and Bulgaria, but also in the United States, because it's a national or international economic driver. And so everybody's terribly afraid of debt. And growing up, my mom said, you cannot have any debt. You cannot have any debt. That's going to set you back. You're just going to end up working to pay off your debt. And she would not allow me to take out any student loans, which I guess she needed to co-sign for. And I knew she wouldn't. So I, was in college and then working my part-time jobs and just making sure that I graduate as quickly as possible so that I can not have any debt.
Right.
I went through some transitional phases that I think are important to mention, especially for other immigrants. I think when I was finishing up my undergraduate, I kind of had this mindset that unless I fully assimilate, eradicate my accent, and don't mention anything about being from somewhere else, other than my obvious last name, that would be the only way for me to be successful in the U.S., and that was really difficult. Did
somebody tell you that, or was that just kind of what you had in your head that you needed to do?
It was more of an experience. Like, for example, when I went to work, I would hear people talk about these reality shows that they watch on Netflix or, this thing that they did over the weekend. And, of course, coming from a different culture, I didn't really watch Netflix. I mostly read and studied and worked and worked and worked. But I had this idea in my head that in order to be successful and to survive here, you need to be relatable and you need to basically become fully American, as if I was born here. And I tried to achieve that for maybe 5 or 6 years. So I started watching, reality shows.
Trying to catch up on pop culture and everything.
Pop culture, which is very different than Bulgarian culture, very different. And then my accent really bothered me because I realized that people don't always have the patience to slow down or the time to understand what you're saying. So I coach myself on how to make sure I speak correctly and speak quickly. And I think that was a little bit stressful.
Yeah, that's a huge burden on a teenager.
For a while there. But looking at it now, I think that it's okay to be unique and it's okay to be different. And that's what the U.S. is all about. So one advice that I would give to anybody who might be in my situation is, it's okay to be different. That's fine. It's okay to be the strange kid that, speaks 6 languages and has an accent and grew up somewhere that, there wasn't a lot of food or a lot of pop culture or only one TV channel. That's okay.
Yeah. You majored in international affairs, which makes sense, right? Because of your kind of international perspective on things. So did you have an idea of what you wanted to do with that? I know you went back to school later and we'll talk about that, but at this point, did you have a plan for that degree or what led to that?
Absolutely. I was joining the Peace Corps. I was going to the Peace Corps. I was still getting away, but for a little bit. And international affairs was actually my brother's suggestion as well. but I'd always wanted to see the world, and I think that comes from the inability to do so and leave when we were young. And so I majored in international affairs. I really enjoyed that degree. And after I was done with my degrees, my last semester interned at the governor's office as well as a congressman's office, just because I wanted to have some professional experience in the U.S. And
that's a big deal to get that internship in the governor's office. That's really competitive, I know.
It was a great experience, too. I really enjoyed working there.
And who was the governor at the time?
It was Governor Rick Scott.
Okay.
Senator Rick Scott now.
Yeah.
That was a great, very fast-paced, very busy internship. But I learned a lot about the legislative process and, the executive office of the governor as well. But I still had my eyes set on the Peace Corps. And so I was going through that process, which is also a very competitive, very difficult process. There was a lot of medical screening, and the fact that I spoke 6 languages was definitely a plus.
Yeah, I would think.
So I was assigned Nepal. So I was heading to Nepal for the Peace Corps. However, right as I was getting ready to leave, there was a really unfortunate earthquake in Kathmandu, which is the capital of Nepal. I believe it was about 7.5 on the Richter scale, and it was absolutely devastating. Mm-hmm. So that led to having to wait on the reassignment, and I kind of took that as a sign because the governor's office was offering a job. I must have done well at that internship. And I also happened to meet someone in my international affairs program that was very handsome and very nice, but most importantly, very intelligent, and ended up marrying him. So, that wasn't the only reason, but I thought, if there's a whole earthquake, there's probably a reason behind that, and maybe it's a sign that I should stay here and take this job.
Okay. So you didn't actually get to go?
No.
Okay.
I didn't. Almost, though. I will visit Nepal one day. I promise. It's on my bucket list.
And we'll be right back. How I Got Here is sponsored by Barano Heating and Air Conditioning in Tallahassee. I've been friends with Patrick Barano since we met in a chamber leads group about 15 years ago. I'll admit that I pursued him pretty hard to be his marketing firm and eventually won him over. And the reason I wanted to work with him is that I was already a customer, and I knew what kind of company he and his father before him had built. He cares about his customers, he cares about his team, and he cares about this community. I've experienced Barano Heating and Air when they installed a complete system replacement a few years ago, and I enjoy peace of mind and same-day service with my Total Comfort Service Agreement. I've also been behind the scenes at their office and seen firsthand the true character of this company. And that's why we're so proud to represent them. To learn more or to schedule an appointment online anytime, visit baranoac.com. They really always will be there for you. And now back to the show. When you can't pursue the Peace Corps because of the natural disaster there, you end up not going back to the governor's office, but you take a job with the Department of Education. Is that right?
Yes. So that was a recommendation from the governor's office, and I always knew that I wanted to help children. That was one of I wanted to be in education in some kind of way and make some sort of impact. And the recommendation was to go to the Department of Education. I was there for 2 years, and during that time, I also started working on my master's degree in public administration because I had to stop kidding myself. We just have the brain for finances in my family. I think it's probably a gene. So I decided to focus on public financial management and specifically nonprofit financial management later on. And that was kind of during the time that I was also at the Department of Education because I can't ever just work and not study or study and not work. I think we're workaholics in my family. We don't know how to rest.
So the accounting, obviously you're good at it. Your mom was good at it. I mean, engineering has tons of math, so it definitely seems like it's in your family, like you said. Did you enjoy it? Is that something that you enjoyed on your own as well, or did you feel like it was just kind of meant to be? Not that it can't be both things.
Sure, yeah. I do enjoy it. I'm certainly good at it, but I knew it wasn't the only thing I always wanted to do.
Right. It was a path to get you to where, to be able to be part of the organizations that you wanted to serve and be with, right?
Sure, yeah.
Right.
And I didn't know exactly what that looked at the time. I had actually kind of thought about maybe going into advocacy and lobbying. But the more I got into my master's program, the more I realized that the nonprofit world is really where I wanted to be.
Yeah. Let's talk about you talked about your heart for children and children's issues and, underrepresented or children who don't have all the benefits maybe of other kids. So where did that come from? And, how has that directed your career path, knowing that you wanted to be involved in helping kids?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So like I said, advocacy is very important to me, and it's something that I still do. When it comes to children, they really have absolutely no control where they were born, just like I didn't. And I had the opportunity, created the opportunity also, thanks to my family, to have a great education. But I really believe that all children deserve that, regardless of where they come from. If it's from, a side of town where poverty is highly present, or from another country where communism just wrecked everything, I believe that we have a duty to make sure that we don't set our children up for failure. And that's very important to me. And I saw the nonprofit world as the best way to do that kind of advocacy. Mm-hmm. And so after I graduated with my master's, I went to the Children's Forum, which is a statewide organization. And I was there for 5 years in the finance sector.
And it's focused on early learning, right?
Mm-hmm. It's focused on early learning. It's a great organization. And I thought I would still be there until today, until someone approached me about an opportunity to be the chief financial officer of Kids Incorporated at the Big Bend.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that.
Sure.
Kids Incorporated, we've had the privilege of working with you in that organization here. We greatly appreciate what you all do and the impact you have on the community. So thank you for doing that work. Tell us about your job there, what you do, what Kids Incorporated is all about. Just kind of paint that picture for us.
Yes, absolutely. So I will tell you, it was a little bit scary when I was approached to be recruited for this position because I was 28. And it's a big responsibility, big liability. It's a 91-person organization at this moment, serving 208 children in our community, as well as Madison and Jefferson counties. And, I just thought, wow, a C-suite position at 28 sounds unbelievable. Yeah. But I feel like I was born 45, 45, just because of everything I've been through. Right. And I've never really had the opportunity to act like a child and be like a child. I had to grow up really early. So it was scary at first, but then I thought, I welcome the challenge and the responsibility. And so a little bit about Kids Incorporated. We have been serving the community for 51 years. We just had our 50th anniversary last year. And what Kids Incorporated does is it provides comprehensive services to at-risk families and children via federal grant and a few other funding sources. So we have 4 child care centers. 3 are in Leon County. 1 is in the rural Madison and Jefferson counties. And we have been serving those children for a long time now. It's a truly fantastic organization that makes a really big difference in our community. And so it's exactly what I wanted to do and the purpose and meaning behind what I strive for, which is making sure that children who otherwise wouldn't have those opportunities are able to obtain a really good education.
Yeah, That's very cool. And your job, you oversee all the finances, the grants, everything related to the funding side of the organization. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's a good place to be because it allows me to see what we can do. And we're currently expanding. I'm pushing for expansion so that we can serve more children. There's 1,300 children on the Early Learning Coalition's waiting list, waiting for help with childcare. And so being in that position allows me to do what I am good at, which is finance and accounting, but also combine it with my passion for helping children.
Yeah. How do we do in Tallahassee as far as taking care of our children overall? I know we can always improve, but compared to what you've seen in your experiences in other places and what I'm sure you know about other communities and all that, how do you think we do here?
I think that we do very well when it comes to school-age children. So 5 starting at kindergarten, going all the way through the 12th grade. And then, of course, we have wonderful higher ed institutions. But I really do think that there is a lot of room for improvement in our early childhood care and education. And I say this all the time, children are not born at 5. My child wasn't born at 5. And it's just kind of a standard that I really dislike, because it seems like unless the family is financially able to provide early learning opportunities for children, they're barely existent. And those years, research shows that those are the formative years. So even though until 3 or kids can't really communicate that well, they are learning all the time. And it's truly the foundational years. And having that curriculum and having that care and that nurture is very important. And so I get really frustrated because there's not enough funding, there's not enough investment for our youngest citizens. And we really, I think we have a duty to take care of them.
Now, you mentioned you're a mom, too. You have a son. So how has that changed your perspective at all on all this?
I think that being a parent, that having that responsibility makes you realize how much need there is out there in the world. And so, through various opportunities and very hard work, I'm lucky and privileged enough to be able to provide good education for him and pay for these early learning experiences. But it makes me sad for a lot of families who can't. And I think that's something that you really feel and relate to once you become a parent. So that I want every child to have those opportunities that my child has had.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right, switching gears here a little bit. I know you still like to travel domestically and around the world. So why is that important to you? Why do you still seek those opportunities to get out and see new places?
Sure. I will say that being well-rounded is very important, outside of just not being able to see anything past East Berlin, which is certainly a dream of every person that's lived under communism or post-communism, is to see the world. But it's important to see different places and gain different perspectives, because then you come back and you're able to improve your own community that you really care about. And that's always been very important to me. So
how does that work for you? How do you translate what you see into implementing things locally that can make a difference?
Sure, yeah. So for example, with early childhood education and just early childhood in general, things that you see in other countries can be when a mom comes home, there is a nurse that's provided to her that comes in and checks in on her for the first couple of months. So that's something that we actually have at Kids Incorporated. We have a home-based program where new moms have a staff member of ours come into their home, and we can provide not care, because the mom is, or parent, could be dad, the primary caregiver, but we kind of talk about, this is some curriculum, this is some educational stuff, the basics, kind of like parenting classes. So there are other countries in the world where that's available, and it just comes with being born there. So it's a system that we can implement here as well. Or something like going to a restaurant, and the restaurant has 2 designated staff members in a room for children enrichment activities. So that mom and dad or the caregiver can go and have a meal, and the child can be in another room with somebody that's background screened, that's, knows how to care for children. That is so incredibly common in other countries.
Wow. Yeah, I've never heard of that.
You do not see it in Tallahassee. So it's stuff like that, suggesting to restaurant owners. And of course, I know the finances behind it. I know that that's another staff member, but you're probably going to have a lot of patrons.
Yeah.
So you will be banking at that point if mom and dad can bring in their kid.
I know big places like IKEA does that. So the little kids don't want to be dragged around a 3-hour journey through furniture and accessories. So they've got a whole play area, which makes a lot of sense. Everybody wins in that.
And IKEA is Swedish, so that idea came from somewhere else. So that's why I think international travel and interstate travel is so incredibly important. For example, Missouri has this program where you get a nurse through a nonprofit to come and help you out as a new mom or parent the first couple of months. We don't have such a nonprofit locally. So it's important to gain outside perspective so that you can improve your community.
Yeah. What is your favorite trip you've ever taken?
So I think there's 2 that are my very favorite. The first one has to be Israel. I went in 2015. It's such an incredibly special place. There's so much history. There's so much religion. Of course, there's a lot of conflict as well. Yeah. But that was a very eye-opening, very educational experience for me outside of just Israel's incredible natural beauty. And then Hawaii was pretty cool too.
Yeah.
It was very beautiful. I went during COVID, so there was nobody. There was nobody.
It's probably a good time to be in Hawaii.
It was fantastic. I had to take so many tests, and it was so stressful within, remember the whole 72 hours testing period?
Right, yeah.
But it was very beautiful and very different. I think those two were my favorite.
And if you kept failing a test, that wouldn't be the worst place to be stranded either, probably.
For 2 weeks. Yeah. You probably couldn't go outside of your hotel room, but that's okay. You still have the sunset view. Yeah. It's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. All right. So do you have another trip planned anywhere fun anytime soon?
Yeah. So I have this thing called mom guilt, major mom guilt, because I work so much, and I probably could work less, but I think it's really important to care about what you do and to really fall in love with your job. I know that's cliche, but it's important.
Yeah.
So it's my little's first spring break. He's in kindergarten this year. And so I decided that Mom's Guild is going to take him to Portugal for spring break.
Wow.
So we're going to go and we're going to spend some time over there because I want him to have that international perspective as well. Mm-hmm. That's very important to me. He is all-American boy. He is a Tallahassean. He loves it. He loves American football. He loves everything American. But I still want to expose him to a lot of other things as well.
Why Portugal?
I've always wanted to go, and the tickets were on a very good deal.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Perfect combo.
In Portugal. I've always wanted to see Gibraltar, too. I think that's a very interesting place.
Yeah. All right. You're very active in the community, and, you're the, CFO of Kids Incorporated, but that's not you're not behind the desk looking at your computer all day. I know you're active doing things. You serve on a number of boards, especially related to children's issues in the local business community. So how do you choose where to volunteer and how to spend your time outside of work and family?
So I choose that very intentionally based on things that I truly care about sometimes, and sometimes I get asked and I feel bad saying no because everybody needs a treasurer on their board.
Yeah. Sort of like the marketing person. Everybody wants those people on the board.
Absolutely. Marketing is so important. But I have been on the Guardian Ad Litem Foundation board for a really long time now, and the Guardian Ad Litem program is focused on children that are abused, neglected, and abandoned in our community that are undergoing dependency court cases, and the foundation fundraises for those children. So, the Department of Children and Families will pay for things such as childcare, food, and things like that. But with some of the older kids, they might need tutoring, or they might want to go to prom, or they might want to have all these experiences that children that are not in the foster care or dependent care system have. And that's where the foundation comes in. So we provide funds for things such as tutoring, class ring, prom, gas, somebody's first apartment needs to be furnished. And those are truly kids that have gone from one foster home to another, or have had terrible experiences at home. So that's a really near and dear cause to my heart. And I'm also involved in the tech community because I think that Tallahassee is such a growing and thriving and advancing place. And it's why I decided to stay here and call it home. And our tech community is a $1 billion industry that I don't think everybody knows about. And I think that's really, really exciting. Outside of that, some women issues, specifically with the Tallahassee-Leon County Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. I sit on their Economic and Wage Committee. Okay. I think that's very important for women to be able to advance and not feel like having a child in any way is going to be standing in their way of doing the other things that they want to in their lives.
Right.
And I'm probably involved with other things as well. It's a really long list.
Yeah. Well, I know one group you're also involved with, and that's Leadership Tallahassee.
Yes.
Class
one of my
40.
Favorites. Yes. Fierce
right?
40.
Fierce 40. So tell us about that. What the impact being part of that group and going through that process has had on your life, career, and especially I'm sure you learned something about Tallahassee you didn't know. Everybody does. So what What was that process like for you, and how does that continue to impact your life now?
Sure, absolutely. So my boss walked into my office about a year after I'd started at Kids Incorporated, and she said, "You have to do this. You have to apply." So she was in class 39, and I submitted my application. I had a lot of community involvement and ideas and goals. So I was welcomed and accepted into class 40, and it's been a great experience. My classmates came from various walks of life, from the business community, from the nonprofit community, from all over in Tallahassee. Everyone had a different experience, but we all ultimately had the same goal, which was to help our community. And I can tell you that Leadership Tallahassee has taken me to the worst places in Tallahassee and to the best places in Tallahassee. And it's really important to see both sides. I was actually surprised when I saw how many of my classmates hadn't seen so many of the issues in town. But I think I was just already so used to, poverty and lack of resources coming where I came from that it wasn't surprising for me. I knew that this existed. But being a part of that group has been incredible. We have done some wonderful things. Our class project was focused on helping Second Harvest of the Big Bend and making sure that there's educational opportunities for children to come and learn how to grow their own food and live a sustainable life. I'm still very involved. I am on the Opportunity Tallahassee Committee, on the recruitment committee. We are actively recruiting for LT42. Applications are due April 22nd. So submit your application. And I see myself continuing to be involved with that group because it's exactly what I really care about, which is servant leadership and community service and a group of people who are leaders in their area coming together and everybody bringing something to the table for the common goal of improving our community.
Yeah. For me, it's so easy to live in your bubble, go to the same places, do the same things, see the same people, and to have an opportunity to have that circle expanded by so much and look at the same place through someone else's eyes was a huge benefit to me.
Absolutely. I think that's very important. And, there's only 24 hours in a day, especially when there's work involved and children and everything else. So you really have to be intentional and you have to want to be uncomfortable on purpose. And something that really stayed with me when I was filling in my Leadership Tallahassee application was, you keep hearing that phrase, I want to be around like-minded people. I want to be around like-minded people. And the applications talked about being around unlike-minded people. Mm-hmm. And I think that will always stay with me for the rest of my life is I want to be around people that think differently than I do. I think there's a lot of value to that. And you can still accomplish a lot hearing those different perspectives.
Yeah. All right, our final two questions.
Mm-hmm.
Anita, looking back, what is the one thing or person that changed the trajectory of your life to this point?
Ooh. Well, the one thing will probably be moving to the U.S.
Sure. That's a big one.
Definitely. One person, I can't tell you that there's any one person who has, but I will say that there is several. And one that truly stands out is my former boss. Her name is Carrie Cloud at the Children's Forum. She was a fabulous CPA. And being able to shadow her and learn from her and have her as my mentor, while also having her understand that I am a new mom, which I became during my employment there. I thought I'd never be able to grow and I'd never be able to, be successful. But having that support on a personal level, but also having somebody that I could shadow and learn from was very important. So I'll always be grateful to her for that.
Yeah. My final question. The podcast is named How I Got Here. So we've talked about how you got to this point in your life. Where do you think here might be for you in 3 to 5 years?
Well, in 3 to 5 years, I hope to still be here in Tallahassee, still fighting to expand educational opportunities, especially in the early childhood field. And hopefully being able to bring in more people that truly care about this mission into my vision.
Thanks for listening to the show. You can subscribe at Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review. It really does make a difference. Thanks to my amazing staff at Fiore Communications, who pick up the slack while I'm working on these podcasts, and to Troy Bloom for composing our theme music. You can hear more of Troy's creations on Facebook and Instagram at Troy Bloom Music. To connect with the podcast or suggest a future guest, follow us on social media or email us at podcast@fiorecommunications.com.